I've got this $200 lens about a year ago. I had no plans to purchase it, but I said to myself how bad it can be. And the result surprised me. And just a small disclaimer before we start. I'm not sponsored by Nikon in any way, just sharing my personal experience with you. And I'm not gear reviewer, but I am a photographer who works his gear properly and can give you an insight on how is it to use this lens in the real world and what kind of results you can get out of it. All the photographs that you will see in this video are captured with this small lens. And they did pass some form of post-production, but nothing drastic. Contrast, details, clarity, and some color corrections. About a year ago, I switched to Nikon. I bought the Nikon Z along with a few other lenses. You can see my full gear list in the description. And I was really on the fence about this one. It's not the focal length that I usually work with, but it was such a good deal, and I guess the marketing somehow worked. So many people are raving about how the 40mm being the most natural focal length at all. And seeing Ricoh and Leica introduce cameras with fixed 40mm lenses also contributed to my curiosity. So I said to myself, okay, let's give it a try. This is the older 40mm. There is a newer one that is released and costs 50% more, but the differences are only external. The tech inside was left exactly the same. And since I don't treat my cameras like Barbie dolls, the look didn't really matter to me. So I went with the older one. And here's what I think about it. My first impression about this thing was the weight. Coming back to full frame kind of terrified me for one reason. It seems that camera manufacturers are determined to put us in shape. And every new lens that they release is optically better, but also heavier, bulkier, and bigger than the last one. I know that most people don't mind the weight. They use their cameras for an hour or two, or mostly in a studio. But if you do photography for 6 months a year and spend long hours outside walking with that gear on your neck, there's a huge difference between 1 kg and 170 grams. And yes, that thing weighs 170 grams. It feels almost like there is no lens attached to the camera when you have it there. You can easily hold the camera in one hand or just hang it on your neck for hours and you don't get tired. The second impression is the size. Look how tiny it is. The small size and the natural look make people more comfortable with it. And it's so convenient when you're shooting outside. You get full frame quality on one hand, but the setup is not bigger than a crop sensor body. And slightly more pro lens makes the camera noticeably larger, which not only gets heavily on your neck, but also attracts way more attention. The build quality on this thing is, well, it's plastic, it's cheap, but I didn't find to be any issue for me. And this lens is not weather sealed. It is designed with consideration for dust and drip resistant performance, but it's not fully weather sealed. And I was pretty nervous shooting with it in the rain. It got some drops on it, which I wiped quickly, and at the end the lens was fine, but I don't feel comfortable shooting with this lens in the rain. The build quality is solid overall, and the lens feels tougher than it actually looks. Originally I was concerned that it would feel like a light and cheap plastic lens, but I was overall impressed by how it feels and functions. It's a single barrel design with internal focusing mechanism, means that there are no moving parts externally or openings to suck in the dust or moisture. The lens doesn't come with hood, and if you actually want to screw one, you will need to take your UV filter out. But I just use it like that, no hood, no filter, and it's an ugly duck, but hey, it works. And it's made in Thailand, at least my version. Now let's speak about that 40mm field of view. It felt really weird at first. I mostly shoot a mix of street documentary and travel photography in air, and I realized very quickly that the layering and the perspective games that I used to play with when using wider lenses just didn't work the same here. But where this focal length really shines is in documenting street life in a really effortless way. With 28 or even 35mm, I often need to rush in to get the frame I want. With the 50mm, sometimes I felt too close. That 40mm just felt like a sweet spot for me. Just leave the camera and I found myself kind of on the right distance from my subject. So if you shoot in fast-paced run and gun style, you will feel right at home with this one. It's really great for capturing scenes with a little bit of breathing room between you and your subject. It's ideal for environmental portraits, half-body shots, 2 people in a frame, and even detail shots. You get close enough without getting into people's faces and just capturing ordinary street moments. Perfect. But for close-up portraits, it was less successful. It's still okay, you can shoot headshots, and here's a proof of that, but that's not where this lens shines. Let's extend a little bit on that portraiture things. You can do portraits, but it's better to focus on a little bit more open framing, and take a bit larger distance than the minimal focusing distance, which is roughly around 30 centimeters with this one. You can see on this portrait that even that I've pushed the sharpness, clarity, and the textures quite a bit, the detailization is not really there. But at the moment you take a step back, the lens performs better. This is probably one of the only optical downsides that I've noticed and kind of bothered me. It is not extremely bad, but compared to the Nikon S 50mm 1.8, the difference is very much visible. But where it shines, it's in this 1 meter distance, around 3 feet. It's the perfect distance for environmental portraits and just regular street scenes. I think that environmental portraits are the lens sweet spot, both from the distance performance and rendering perspective. They all come out of the lens simply beautiful. And the funny thing is that I didn't realize it until recently. Only now, looking back at the photographs from my last 6-month trips, I can clearly see that this is where that lens performs the best. And this is where I will use it the most in the future. It will be my environmental portrait lens. So can you still do layers with it? Yes, you can. It's just that you need to have a little bit more space, like in this photograph. In this particular corner in Kolkata, the layering worked very well. It's mostly because it was layering on a relatively large street, and if you need to work in a place with a less space, you might encounter a problem when you are too close to the subject. You want to layer and you don't have large enough depth of field to keep all the elements sharp. This is another photograph where layering worked. I had this woman with the umbrella layered on the background of a taxi and a bus, and this is probably one of my favorite photographs out of that lens. And you will ask, how is the low light performance on this one? I had several opportunities pushing that lens to work in low light scenarios. I think that the f2 is doing a great job here. But at the end, low light performance comes mostly from the camera sensor, not the lens. Lens just gets the light in, and whatever aperture opening you have, that will be it. So combined with my Nikon ZF, it did a great job. I was very happy with the results. I photographed in night markets with it, in covered markets with artificial lighting, people welding metal in factories in Kolkata. I shot with it using artificial light and during rain in street alleys. I even did some portraits in low light with it and much more. In all cases, I'm happy with the results and the autofocus performance in low light. I think the lens is a doer. The image quality is good, it reproduces colors wonderfully. Sure, it doesn't have all the fancy coatings, but I've had zero issues. Sharpness, just fine. Actually, the biggest issue with this lens is the mental shift of using a cheap lens. At first, I didn't take this lens seriously at all. As a former Canon shooting, I used to work with the professional L series. In Fujifilm, I went straight for the f1.4 primes, so I was used to paying over $1,000 for a lens. So honestly, my expectations for this one were very low. But once I started using it, it exceeded them. For $200, it performs better than some lenses that cost several times more. And when I shoot with a $200 lens, I worry less, I just shoot more, it's liberating. Okay, so let's quickly summarize some of the practical things about this lens. Autofocus works fine, I didn't notice any major difference compared to my other S lenses. f2 shallow depth of field, yes, but it gets softer when you get really close. That's why I'm not fan of using it for headshots. Low light performance, yes, with the f2, it felt pretty comfortable shooting in low light. Chromatic aberrations, yeah, it has them. But for my style of photography, I wasn't bothered. I never saw them in real life. Video, haven't tested it. Others might have more insights on that one. The build quality, I already said, it's cheap, it's plastic, but it hasn't been a problem so far. Weather sealing, nope. It's dust and drip resistant, but not fully weather sealed. Lens hood doesn't come with this one. If you want to use hood, you have to screw it in the place of the filter. I just shoot without it. How does that lens compare to others? Where there aren't many 40mm lenses that fit that Nikon Z mount, there are lenses from Voigtlander, from which only the f1.2 version has a native Nikon Z mount, but it's important to remember that it's manual focusing with double the weight and triple the price. And there is the Viltrox, which is similar weight, but it's somehow double the size. I don't know how they engineered that one. And it's f2.5. Reviewers online have a lot of good things to say about the Viltrox. It's sharper and it even been rendering better. Personally, I didn't have the chance to test it, and I think I'm fine with the Nikon version. The Viltrox is also a little bit cheaper. What other reviewers are saying about this 40mm lens? A lot of people say that it has semi-classic rendering. Personally, I didn't see anything way too classic with it. It is just that the bokeh is little less perfect than the bigger S lenses, and classic lenses would usually flare and bloom a little bit more, but not that lens. So the classic look is highly subjective from my point of view. Maybe someone can elaborate a little bit more about that in the comments. The sharpness falls on the edges. Yes, that's true, but it's not that bad for street or travel photography. I wouldn't choose this lens for architecture or landscape anyway. This 40mm is a simpler lens and sacrifice engine corner performance in favor of punchier tones. Just need to accept that part. It has some loss of sharpness in the center from close distance. Yes, that is true. I've noticed that phenomenon on close-up portraits. Even raising the aperture to 2.8 or f4 didn't completely resolve the problem. It has quiet and smooth autofocus. I agree, autofocus is fast and snappy. It doesn't have any strong noise like other budget lens that I've tried before. And some of the best things about this lens are its size, its weight, and its price. What would make it better? Well, better sharpness at minimum focus distance at f2 and weather sealing, but my gut tells me that that would also increase the price. One of the things that you will notice using it is the creative impact on you. This lens shifts you away from complex and layered compositions. It gives you a space physically and creatively between you and your subject. It makes you compose differently, and that's an interesting process. Like every lens, you need to give it some time to know it and feel it better, especially if you don't shoot 40mm regularly. And who would this lens be for? I think this is best for travel, street, documentary photographers, people capturing everyday life and their family and friends. It's great for walking around on a city as everyday carry and spontaneous shooting. It fits together with the camera in almost any bag. It's just that small. And would I recommend it for beginners? Absolutely. And not just for beginners, many professionals can benefit from having this little lens in their bag. This lens did a big change in me. It changed how I think about cheap glass. We're often pushed by influencers and marketing teams to buy the expensive lenses. Each one of these expensive lenses solves like a solution to all your creative and sharpness problems. They promise sharpness, they promise low light magic, creamy bokeh, and strong arm muscles. But in most cases, upgrading your lens will have a very little impact on your growth as a photographer. Yes, you will get more bokeh, maybe a bit more sharpness, but that's it. Honestly, 85% of the people who own digital cameras today don't need expensive lenses. Even though it's not the sharpest tool out there and not the most weather sealed one, but this $200 lens still lets me create some solid work. And my final verdict after 1 year of usage, will it become my main lens? Probably not. And that's not because of the lens itself, it's the focal length. I'm still drawn to complex composition and not quite ready to simplify. But will I experiment with it more? Oh yes, absolutely. I still feel that we're in the getting to know each other phase. I have much more to learn about shooting at this distance. Will I bring it to shoots with me? Of course. I love a lens that can fit in a pocket and doesn't take space and weight. But now I would love to hear your experience with it. And let me know if you have any questions in the comments. And remember that lens is just a small part of your photography. The largest part that you need to invest the most is to learn how to photograph better. So it is good to focus on gear, but it's much better to focus on improving. Have a good day and happy shooting. See you next time.